The street was unusually quiet that evening. A soft wind rustled the leaves overhead, casting flickering shadows on the pavement as the dim streetlights struggled to hold back the night. Emma Brooks pulled her coat tighter around herself and shifted her purse to the other shoulder. It had been a long shift at the diner, extra hours, fewer tips, and she was exhausted. Her sneakers scraped the sidewalk as she made her way home from the subway station. She usually avoided walking home this late, but her ride cancelled last minute, and she figured the 15-minute walk wasn't too bad. She'd done it before. Still, something about that night felt different. Maybe it was the way the air hung heavy, or how the usual buzz of the neighborhood had disappeared into a hollow silence. Emma glanced over her shoulder. Nothing. Just the empty street behind her. She picked up her pace, now focused on the distant traffic lights ahead. As she passed by a vacant lot flanked by brick buildings, she heard a sound. Footsteps. Quick and faint. Her heart began to beat a little faster. She told herself not to panic. It could be someone else walking home. A neighbor. Someone harmless. She didn't want to assume the worst. But then, without warning, a hand grabbed her arm tightly. "Keep walking," a deep voice hissed in her ear. Emma froze. Her mind raced, unsure whether to scream, pull away, or freeze in place. The man's grip tightened slightly. He wasn't dragging her, just holding her firmly. "I said keep walking," he repeated, low and urgent. "Don't look at me. Don't say a word." Against every instinct in her body, she obeyed. She started walking again, her steps shaky and breath shallow. The man moved with her, slightly behind and to the side, his hand still wrapped around her arm. He wasn't hurting her, but the threat in his voice was enough to paralyze her. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered, barely audible. "Quiet," he snapped. "Don't talk." Emma's mind whirled. This had to be a robbery. Or worse. She looked ahead, trying to find someone, anyone. But the street was empty. Her apartment building was still 3 blocks away. She tried to recall everything she'd ever heard about staying safe in moments like this: stay calm, observe details, don't escalate. The man was tall, maybe 6 feet, wearing a hoodie and jeans. He smelled faintly of gasoline and soap. She couldn't see his face. "Where are we going?" she asked. He didn't answer. They turned left at the next corner, a darker street lined with tall hedges and parked cars. Emma's panic threatened to take over. Then suddenly, the man let go. "Get behind that car," he ordered, pointing to a dark SUV parked at the curb. She hesitated. "Now," he growled. Shaking, Emma ducked behind the vehicle, crouching. The man crouched beside her. Then, without explanation, he said, "Don't say a word. Just watch." They stayed there for 10 seconds. Then she heard it, footsteps coming quickly from the direction they had just come. Another man, taller, broader, walking with purpose and a strange, eerie calm. Emma's original captor whispered, "That man's been following you since you left the diner." Her breath caught. "What?" "I saw him hanging around outside. I've seen him before. He's been watching that place for days." Emma stared at the stranger beside her. Her fear was still real, still throbbing in her chest, but confusion and a flicker of trust were starting to break through. "Who are you?" she asked softly. "My name's Caleb. I live 2 buildings over. I used to be law enforcement. Retired now." The other man passed their hiding spot, his head darting from side to side, looking for something or someone. "I couldn't let him get to you," Caleb whispered. "Didn't want to spook him too soon. I needed him to think he still had the chance." Emma's head spun. So many questions, so little time to ask them. They waited another minute in silence until the other man turned the corner and disappeared from sight. "We need to get you home," Caleb said. "And we need to call this in." Emma's legs felt like jelly, but she nodded. They stood up slowly, Caleb keeping a watchful eye on the dark street. He walked her the remaining blocks to her apartment building, never letting his attention drift. Once they reached the lobby, she turned to him, her voice shaky. "Why did you help me?" Caleb looked tired, like someone who had carried the weight of many dark nights. "My daughter used to walk home late too," he said. "She was taken 5 years ago. I wasn't there. I made a promise I'd never let it happen to someone else again. Emma's eyes filled with tears. She couldn't find the words. She just nodded and stepped forward to give him a grateful, trembling hug. Inside her apartment, she locked every door and window, then collapsed onto her couch and called 911. She reported the suspicious man, gave them all the details, and then hung up. It was 3:14 a.m. before she could sleep. Over the next few days, the police reached out. They located surveillance footage from the street, confirming Emma's account. The man who had followed her had been linked to 2 other stalking cases in the area. Caleb's actions had likely prevented something terrible from happening. Emma made a point to visit Caleb the following weekend. She brought him a pie from the diner and a heartfelt thank you note. He accepted it quietly, with the kind of grace that comes from living through loss. In the weeks that followed, Emma couldn't shake the experience. Every late-night shift ended with her being escorted home, sometimes by co-workers, sometimes by Caleb. The neighborhood began to look different, less safe, more unpredictable. But it also awakened something powerful in her. She signed up for a self-defense class, started community patrols, and even pushed her apartment complex to improve lighting and add more security cameras. She and Caleb stayed in touch. They would sit sometimes on his porch, sipping coffee, talking about nothing and everything. He never brought up his daughter again, and she never pushed. One night, a few months later, Emma was locking up at the diner when she noticed a girl no more than 16 waiting alone outside. Her name was Riley, and she was trying to get home after her phone died and her ride didn't show. Without hesitation, Emma offered to walk her, staying with her until she was safely inside her home. Riley hugged her goodbye and said, "Thank you. It's scary out there sometimes." Emma smiled softly. "Yeah, it can be. But there are still good people out here, too." The truth was, that night had changed her life. Not just because of what could have happened, but because of the stranger who stepped in. Someone who had lost, but still chose to protect. It reminded her that even in fear, hope exists. Even in darkness, someone might still say, "Keep walking," not as a threat, but as protection. And from that night on, Emma never walked home alone again, not because she was afraid, but because she had made it her mission to walk with others.